panelists. Sitting in the middle to the left is Mr. Chuck Hayip, Regional Commander of Kowloon West. And on the left, we have Mr. Pokachun, Chief Superintendent of Police Public Relations Branch. On the right of Mr. Chuck is Mr. Leung Wai Lok, Acting Deputy Chief Fire Officer. To his right is Mr. Wong Wai Shun, Senior Superintendent Operations. And to your right is Mr. Kong Wing Chang, Senior Superintendent, and to his left is Mr. Lee Kwai Wah, Senior Superintendent of Organized Crime and Triad Bureau. The speakers will take their turns to speak, and then there will be question and answer session. Would you please raise your hands, identify yourself and the organization you represent, and you're allowed a maximum of 3 questions. Mr. Kong. In the past week, major thoroughfares in Hong Kong has been seriously blocked by rioters. Hong Kong traffic has come to a near paralysis. Various tertiary education institutions has been taken over by rioters and they've been turned into arsenals. As you can see, that on roads, you can see bricks dug up by rioters and lampposts cut off. Hong Kong has been left in ruins. I'm sure that you, like me, are saddened by what we see. How long do we tolerate and condone such acts of the rioters? The arrangement of today's press conference is I will first ask Mr. Chuck, the Regional Commander of Kowloon West, to give you information about the operational arrangements of the Polytechnic University as well as some clarifications. And then I will give you an overall picture of the destructive act of rioters territory-wide as well as some operational figures. And then Mr. Leung of the FSD will talk to you about dangerous goods, and we will also talk to you about a case where a prisoner was snatched. Mr. Chuck, at various locations a few days ago, we have seen near the Polytechnic University different violent scenes. What's most worrying is that rioters have set fire at various locations. I will show you a clip to show you the situation. 黑衣人開始攻勢，向警方投擲汽油彈，密集式投擲，路面火光紅紅。警方舉黑旗同橙旗之後，以催淚彈還擊。嘉諾撒聖瑪利書院同埋歷史博物館對開煙霧彌漫。黑衣人密集式反攻。 防暴警察向前推進，黑衣人組成傘陣，再發動攻勢，無間斷掟汽油彈。 警方繼續以催淚彈對付。持續咗超過20分鐘先暫停。 I think Hong Kong people could safely use the Cross Harbour Tunnel to cross the harbour was last Wednesday. A few days ago, the toll plaza of Polytechnic University has been taken over by rioters. Hong Kong people could not use the tunnel anymore. Actually, earlier on, Monday last, the campus of Polytechnic University was taken over by rioters. You may remember that on that day, inside the campus, there has been widespread destruction, arson. For the subsequent couple of days, they practice hurling petrol bombs in groups or bow and arrow. Last Thursday, they have used arrows to shoot a police officer who is carrying out his duties at Austin Road. Rioters have turned the campus into an arsenal to produce petrol bombs en masse, and they have also used bombs that are made from compressed gas. Don't forget that there has been a group of rioters occupying the Polytechnic University for a week. Yesterday, matters came to a head. At about 10 a.m. yesterday, a group of people took the initiative to clear up road blockages outside the Polytechnic University. I can understand that people could no longer tolerate the act of rioters. However, when the rioters saw these people clearing the blockages, they used hard objects, petrol bombs, or even bows and arrows to attack those good citizens. There are police officers who have been shot by slingshots and arrows. One of the police officers was still in hospital. In the past week, the police have always just stayed outside the campus to set up their line of defense. However, rioters blatantly flouted the law, and they've been storming the line of defense of the police. Say, for example, on Saturday last week, rioters have left the campus and pushed towards the line of defense of the police near the History Museum at the south of Chatham Road. And yesterday, we could see that rioters indiscriminately attack citizens as well as police officers. In order to stop the situation from escalating, we have, starting from 11:30 a.m., via different channels, appealed to members of the public not to go near the area of the Polytechnic University. Starting from noon yesterday, every several hours, we will, at least 4 times, disseminate information via press release as well as social media to require everyone to leave the campus of Polytechnic University.
At around 9:30 in the evening, once again we appeal that those who remain at the PolyU campus to leave through the exit through the Y Tower at the Leishikyu Tower. Then the police have commenced the first round of arrests. So over the past week, these rioters can leave freely the PolyU campus, and there is supplies keep sending into the campus. As of last night, we have given them sufficient time and sufficient warning to the rioters to heed our appeal and leave. And some rioters insist of hold up inside the campus. In this situation, the police must act. In yesterday's operation, we have arrested a group of self-claiming voluntary first aiders, and some claiming to be reporters. They have been wearing the relevant attire. The police operation is targeting specific individuals or their occupation. So we are talking to rioters staying inside the campus, and yesterday afternoon we stated clearly that anyone entering or staying inside the PolyU campus and assist the rioters may be seen as taking part in the riot. And we also received intelligence that some rioters have changed their clothing and wearing those reflective vests to pretend as reporters or first aiders in order to escape arrest and legal liability. Thus, we would first arrest anyone who we feel suspicious, then we'll thoroughly investigate them. Of the 51 persons who claim to be first aider or reporters, 12 of which self-claim as first aiders, yet they failed to produce any first aid or medical qualifications. And for the reporters, we found that some of them wearing a press vest unable to produce any press credentials. After verifying their identity, we found they were professional journalists, which we released later. Clarifications: we have never proactively break into or enter the PolyU campus. A large hordes of rioters since the early hours have been gathering on Changwon Road and hurling multiple petrol bombs towards the police cordon line. The police must conduct disperse and arrest operations. While our colleagues were chasing the rioters, some individual officers, while in pursuit, may have enter the area close to the PolyU entrances, and upon finishing the arrest, they have retreated because they have been subject to endless attacks. So let me clarify that there are some rumors claiming that we're trying to break into the PolyU. Such narrative is incorrect. And there are also rumors claiming that while the police have been appealing those inside the PolyU campus to leave the PolyU through the Y core exit, but at the same time we were firing tear gas towards the Y exit and stopping them to leave. In fact, those smoke were caused by the burning of debris near the Y exit in order to block it so that those who wanted to leave wasn't able to. Another accusation claimed that this morning the police have used multiple tear gas to the PolyU campus and not allowing those inside the campus to leave. And since 8 o'clock this morning, the large group of masked rioters inside the campus have suddenly leave the PolyU campus and attempted to charge the police cordon line. And we found quite a number of them holding petrol bombs. After not heeding our warnings, the police used the minimum necessary force to disperse them, including using tear gas. And after hurling the petrol bombs, these rioters had returned to inside the campus. Their actions have actually made those who want to leave peacefully unable to do so. Third clarification, and there were rumors floating online that the police have using trains to transport the arrested. I would like to clarify it didn't happen. And last night, when the north and south reach of PolyU was set on fire, the smoke have entered the Hongham station and evacuation need to be conducted. And police is conducting the situation as very tense. And for the PolyU area, it's still very high risk. I appeal those who are still remaining in PolyU to stop using violence. Please come out and surrender. And also appeal those who support the use of violence and to stop using violence and stop supporting the use of violence. At this stage, in Simsatri in Jordan, there's still a large scale public gathering taking place. I appeal them to leave right away in a peaceful manner. The police do it utmost to have a peaceful and orderly end of all public events. I appeal to everyone to stop using violence and everyone to stop supporting violence. And now I'll hand over to Mr. Kwok. And over the past week, the rioters have erected roadblocks across the territory. They dug up bricks and cut up lampposts as roadblocks. And some of the rioters have been hurling objects and petrol bombs from the Polo Highway from the number 2 bridge of the CHK. Viciously paralyzed the main thoroughfare of new territories. And some rioters on the Polytechnic footbridge have vandalized and obstruct the Cross Harbor Tunnel facilities. The acts of the rioters have way departed the so-called justice. They only vandalize for the sake of it. In order to meet their own political aspirations, they have taken hostage of the welfare of all Hong Kong people, which is despicable and extremely selfish. In the past week, we saw some citizens can no longer tolerate these riotous acts and have self-initiated the clearance of road barricades across the territory, hope to do their bit to restore order for their home and community. Unfortunately, the rioters have spun out of control and they will arbitrarily attack normal citizens, including hurling petrol bombs from heights and using vigilante justice on the streets. These acts are cold-blooded and despicable, and we can see the clips we're showing with you.
佢哋身後嘅路障。一個男人同黑衣人發生口角，其他市民隨即加入指罵黑衣人。爭執期間，有人投擲汽油彈。喺網上嘅片段見到汽油彈疑似喺天橋掟落嚟。
你大隊出一段漆咸道南，亦都有人出嚟清路障。一班黑衣人由暢運道出嚟，要求對方離開。部分人拎住磚頭，有人衝前向清路障嘅人嘅方向掟磚。試圖襲擊其中一個人。清路障嘅人加入，一度拉扯同打掟磚嘅黑衣人。幾個黑衣人亦都介入，救走黑衣人。過程入面，兩個清路障嘅人亦都受傷。
As someone born and bred in Hong Kong, it hurts me to see that our lives have been completely disrupted. The acts of the rioters has completely turned Hong Kong upside down. Hong Kong people have to worry about the roadblocks set up by rioters. They are also worried that they might be attacked by rioters anytime. Hundreds of traffic lights have been damaged. Various public transportation facilities has been damaged, and MTR stations have also been vandalized. It's become very difficult for Hong Kong people to go to places. Who is destroying Hong Kong people's lives? There are patients who can't go to attend follow-up appointments at hospitals because of road blockages by rioters. Food for patients and samples of patients cannot be properly transported to where they're supposed to be. We also see that rioters' weapons have evolved from bricks and miscellaneous items to lethal weapons, say for example LPG canisters strapped with nails, thousands of petrol bombs, flares, arrows and corrosive fluid. One of our police officers have been shot at the calf. The arrow embedded into his calf for about 6 to 7 centimeters. You can imagine if that same arrow pierced into the body of a police officer, it would hurt his internal organs. The police officer who was hurt was not carrying out riot duties. He was not wearing riot gear. He was only a media liaison officer standing amongst reporters. If it wasn't him who was shot, it would have been a reporter. This basically is attempted murder, which is very serious. There are also armored vehicles that have caught fire. There are reporters that have been hurt by petrol bombs and other things. You think that this is the liberty as claimed by rioters? Let's watch these clips. So far, 3 universities, namely Chinese University, City University, and Polytechnic University, have made reports to us saying that rioters have possessed a large amount of petrol bombs. They also report that rioters have stolen a large amount of flammable items from the laboratories. We attach importance to these cases. We will seriously carry investigations and protect the safety of Hong Kong people. I would like to also give you information about 2 cases in which police officers have opened fire. First, in the evening of the 17th, rioters used a vehicle to attempt to attack a police officer. It was about 10 p.m. Police have set up cordon line on Austin Road. When we were pushing towards Chatham Road South, a rioter driving a white private car deliberately rammed towards a police officer from behind. The officer at the scene spotted that there was a car going towards them, and they felt that their lives were at risk. As a result, they have fired one round at this private car. The car immediately turned around and fled. We seriously condemn such cold-blooded acts that is similar to terrorist attack. The other case happens in the small hours of today. At the junction of Nathan Road and Jordan Road, a 20-year-old Chinese woman was arrested for unlawful assembly. This arrestee suffered an injury on the head. The police made arrangements for an ambulance to take her away. 2 police officers were responsible for escorting her. The ambulance was stuck in traffic at the junction of the Jordan Road and Ferry Street. Ambulancemen had to go to the location of the arrestee, and it was about 3 a.m. A large amount of rioters stormed the ambulance, trying to snatch the arrestee away. And the police officer was trapped inside the ambulance, and the ambulance was attacked, so he fired 3 rounds. This is very serious. This is a case of assisting criminal. The maximum penalty is 10 years imprisonment. Let me give you some information about arrest figures. We have so far arrested 4,491 people, 3,395 of them are men, 1,096 of them are women, aged between 11 and 83. Offences involved are rioting, possession of offensive weapon, arson, assaulting police officers, etc. In the last weekend, in our operation, we have arrested altogether 154 people, including 103 men, 51 women aged between 13 and 54. Offences involved are mainly unlawful assembly, rioting, and arson. In relation of use of ammunition, as at the small hours of today, in the operation over the weekend, we have used the following. On the 15th of November, Friday, 88 rounds of CS grenade, 19 rounds of rubber bullets. We haven't used any super sock. We have used 4 rounds of 40mm launcher. Saturday on the 16th, we have used 54 rounds of CS grenade, 33 rounds of rubber round. We have not used any super sock. We have used 4 rounds of 40mm launcher. On the 17th of November, that is yesterday, we are still counting the amount of ammunition being used. As at the small hours this morning, we have recorded 7 police officers being injured during the operation. Since June, 454 police officers were injured whilst carrying out operation. Now I'll hand over to Mr. Leung of the Fire Services Department to talk to you about dangerous items as well as the snatching of a prisoner.
And over the past few days, there were a lot of protests and violent incidents across the territory. Most of the protesters are using bricks and debris to obstruct the major thoroughfares, and even poured concrete on the road to obstruct traffic. And the fire engine and the ambulance not able to dispatch to the locations to conduct fire rescue and emergency paramedic services. And for the TST fire engine station and TST first aid station and the Kowloon City first aid station. And for the 15th to 17th, 3 days, in Hong Kong there are 38 fire called not able to meet the FST performance pledge, which is arriving at the scene within 6 minutes. And for urgent paramedic services, in 3 days in Hong Kong there are 530 calls not able to meet the performance target, that is arrival within the 12 minutes. The protesters have been vandalizing MTR stations, shops, and on the streets, and hurling petrol bombs at police officers as well, would lead to severe destruction. On Friday, And for fire-related protests, and there are 47 of those. And for urgent medical services, there are 14. And on Saturday, and there are 24 fire call and 8 for urgent paramedic services. And yesterday, the number of fire 56 and urgent paramedic services 16. These are related to the protests and public gatherings. And for just past Sunday, and on the bridge connecting Poly to the Hong Kong station, that have been set on fire, which multiple explosions were seen, and the protesters have also inside and outside the Poly campus been setting fire in lots of locations and hurling large amount of petrol bombs towards the police, and also resort to projectiles to hurl these petrol bombs. In online clips, we can see that some of the protesters have injured themselves while trying to hurling petrol bombs. I urge the protesters to stop this extremely dangerous acts, and the injured person should seek medical attention as soon as possible. And there were press reports that some inside uni campus there were chemicals being stolen. The FSD reiterate, and since different chemicals carry their own risky characteristics, including inflammable, corrosive, or toxic, inappropriate handling of the chemicals will pose a huge risk for themselves and those surround them. So I strongly urge the protesters must care for the safety of everyone. They should not refrain from using dangerous chemicals. And my appeal that if anyone get exposed to these chemicals, they should remove the clothing and, where possible, douse it with large amount of water. And if you smell some noxious smell indoors, you should leave the room, and if you smell this and outdoors, you should leave the scene as soon as possible and to seek assistance if needed. And now we'd like to talk about at the intersection of Canton Road and Jordan Road, there's an injured being forcibly removed. And for at 2:43 a.m., and for an ambulance belonging to the Mong Kong fire station, we dispatched it to the intersection of Jordan Road and Nathan Road to deal with the urgent case of head injury. When the ambulance arrived at around 3 of that four-set intersection, since there were roadblocks ahead, the paramedics would need to walk on foot to the scene. When they arrived, the paramedics found a female injured person, which then they to do some bandaging on her. Then the paramedics have sent it, put it on a stretcher, and with the escort of police officers back to the ambulance. And in the process, there were a large group of persons gathered and tailing the paramedics and the police. When they were about 15 meters behind the ambulance, the crowd behind started heckling at police officers. At around 3:45 a.m., 3 paramedics, together with 2 policemen and the injured lady, have arrived at the tailed ambulance. To avoid confrontation, the officer in charge of the ambulance allowed the 2 police officers to board it inside the ambulance first. When the police entered the ambulance, then the crowd started attacking the officers inside the ambulance. They hurled bricks, objects inside the ambulance, and other protesters have been pushing the ambulance on both sides and prevent the paramedics from taking the injured inside the ambulance. We attempt to bring the injured onto a safe place, and yet we were stopped by the crowd and actually snatched the injured away from the stretcher. And the officer in charge attempted to close the ambulance door, and yet they were stopped by the crowd. The two paramedics returned to the stretcher that the injured lady was gone. The crowd would continue to push the ambulance on both sides. Then, after hearing a gunshot, the crowd near the ambulance have dispersed. Fortunately, the three paramedics were not injured. However, when we searched for the injured lady, we were not successful. Then the ambulance have confirmed to suffer severe damage. The FSD stressed that all the injured, regardless of their background, the FSD colleague would treat them equally in providing the most appropriate emergency care. If the protester forcibly remove the injured person, they will aggravate the injury and may even threaten that person's life. I hope that all protesters to stop this act, which might cause another layer of injury. The FSD will utilize all resources to stay at the forefront in serving the public. I hope that the public should stay in safe locations and should not take part in illegal protests or violent activities, and should not support the road blockage or arson in any manner. Thank you. And now I will sum up. And for the general strike in the past week, innocent civilians couldn't get to work and they were forced to go on strike. The school forced to suspend their classes, and the students couldn't attend the classes. Shops were vandalized and they were closed for business. The rioters have once again hijacked all Hong Kong people and sacrificing the citizens' right to enjoy their normal life. It is the rioters that are using the objects to set up barricades to paralyze the major thoroughfares. It's the rioters that were manufacturing petrol bombs and lethal weapons inside universities. It is the rioters that been burning cars inside the campus, and they were the rioters that were shooting people with arrows from height or hurling petrol bombs. Shouldn't that qualify as rioters acts? And back in June, when the rioters been hurling bricks, we decry them as violent. Then they've been shooting metal beasts, and we decry them as violent. When they're using corrosive liquid, then we cry them as violent. Then they've been deploying petrol bombs. Initially, they tossed them to the ground, then were used to burn up shops and claimed as renovation, quote unquote. And back then, we've been condemning their violence.
Yesterday, they used bow and arrow to shoot police officers. How much longer do we tolerate them to use violence, and to what level? Where is the rule of law that we take pride in? In addition, we also notice that on the internet there are others who incite other people to participate in riots. There are also some claims on the internet saying that they would engage in terrorist attacks, including the use of vehicles to attack police officers, the use of petrol bombs to attack discipline services quarters. We have to warn rioters that the internet is not outside the law. We will seriously follow up on these illegal acts. In such difficult times, the police will do our best to keep law and order in Hong Kong. We also need your help to keep law and order here. We hope that the general public will work with us and will not condone, connive any of these romanticized acts of violence. We hope that Hong Kong will see peace and order again. I will quickly go over in English what I've said.
Over the weekend, Hong Kong was struck by widespread rioting as extreme violence descended on university campus and residential areas. Rioters also set fire to major transport routes and harbour crossings, leaving part of the city gridlocked for days. Most alarming, deadly weapons were used in the Polytechnic University, which has become a weapon factory as well as a refuge for extremely violent rioters. There are several potentially fatal attacks targeting the police. First, yesterday morning, one of our force media liaison council members was struck by an arrow outside Polytechnic University in Hong Kong. Without a doubt, this is a murderous act. There are many reporters in the same area. The arrow could have killed our officer or anyone in the surrounding. We express the strongest condemnation against this indiscriminate violence. Second, several rioters launched a vehicle ramming attack on our officer at around 10 p.m. yesterday. At that time, our officers were advancing through Chatham Road South, where rioters tried to ram a private car into them. To protect themselves from death or serious injury, one of the officers fired a live round at the car. He then fled towards Tsim Sha Tsui East. Such terrorist attack is again calculated to kill our officers. Although no one was injured in the incident, the development so violence has reached a critical level. Rioters have so intent to murder our officer at all costs. Third, in the lead up to another open fire incident, one 20-year-old Chinese female was arrested for taking part in a riot in Jordan and was taken onto an ambulance for treatment under police escort. The rioters then surrounded and attacked the ambulance, and worst of all, helped the arrested female escape police custody. Afterward, rioters hurled stone bricks into the police officers struggling on the ambulance. In response to the imminent life threat, one officer fired 3 live rounds. No one was injured. We must emphasize assisting offender is a very serious offense, liable to 10 years imprisonment. A university is supposed to be a breeding ground for young talent, but it's unfortunately become a battlefield for criminals and rioters. The PolyU campus in Hong Kong has turned into a weapon factory where an arsenal of weapons were made and stored. Offensive weapons like arrows, petrol bombs, metal balls, and bricks were launched from makeshift catapults mounted on the roof of the campus. One large gas canister, which looked like a self-made bomb, was also seen inside the campus. We also received a report from PolyU that several toxic and dangerous chemicals had been stolen from the laboratory. Among the stolen chemicals were highly volatile explosives. We must warn that the university campus has become a powder where danger is far beyond what we can estimate. For the deployment in PolyU, it's necessary and justified for police officers to take action in order to contain the violence and restore public order. As a whole, over the past week, our officers were only deployed in the periphery of university campus and exercised great restraint. We repeatedly appealed to rioters inside the PolyU to leave. However, all our warnings were ignored. Our message was loud and clear. The violence has escalated to rioting. Anyone who stays behind may be liable to taking part in riot. We also have intelligence certain rioters disguised as first aider or medical officers but were indeed rioting. There's no way for us to verify their identity, so it's justified for our officer to make arrest. Here we must also clarify, we never stormed the PolyU campus. In contrast, those master mob gathered on Cheung Wan Road Beach and hurled petrol bomb at our police officers. These necessitate police dispersal and arrest operations. While individual officers have made arrests near the entrance of the campus, they retreat to their chat line outside the campus afterward. We must stress that we have always been looking for a peaceful resolution to the violent instance. As long as these masked rioters give up their weapon, drop their weapon, follow police instruction, and shoulder their legal responsibility, the police have no reason to use force. In terms of arrest, police arrested in total 154 people, consisting of 103 male and 51 female, aged between 13 and 54 over the weekend. The offense include unlawful assembly, taking part in a riot, possession of offensive weapons, burglary, etc. In conclusion, Hong Kong has been crippled by violence and public fear for almost half a year now. It's saddening to see our society being torn apart. Hong Kong's rule of law has been pushed to the brink of total collapse, as those masked rioters recklessly escalate their violence under the false hope that they can get away with it. We must make this very clear. Nowhere in Hong Kong is a lawless land. If someone breaks the law, regardless of where you hide, the police are duty-bound to bring offenders to justice. No excuse, no political demand can spare anyone from legal liability. Please join us to put an end to violence before it is too late.
好，問題請啲 TVB 唔該。
TVB. I have a question. Well, what is your strategy in relation to Poly University at the moment? You just said that the use of CS gas is not to force the black-clad people back into the campus. And you said that, well, if they put down their weapons, if they peacefully leave the campus, you will not use CS gas. Would you arrest them for suspected to have participated in rioting? We see that they've been trying to break through using petrol bomb. Are you concerned that if it is prolonged, there will be large-scale bloodshed, or it will be something similar to Hong Kong version of Tiananmen Square? And you talk about police officer being shot by arrow. Subsequent to that, how will you protect the safety of police officers? Will you enhance the use of force? You mentioned about someone talking about staging a terrorist attack online. Will you elevate the risk level? I will ask Mr. Check to answer the first two questions. The third question will be answered by Mr. Kwong.
So TV's question was about that of the force use on PolyU, and if those what will happen to those who want to come out, and if those people come out to campus, how will you handle them? Well, I'll just give you a consolidated response. First, we hope for a peaceful resolution, so I appeal everyone to drop their weapons and leave the campus in an orderly manner for us to handle. And everyone who come out, we will arrest him on suspect of taking part in riots. They did not attempt to storm our cordon line. We will not need to use any force. We see a lot of videos or pictures that a lot of people were moving out in their orderly fashion, and we have processed them in the orderly manner, including using zip ties. Then we'll group them together, and then we will send them to another location for further processing. So it manifested that we have been very restrained. We hope this whole incident can be resolved peacefully. So once again, I appeal to those rioters occupying the Polytechnic campus, please drop your weapons and leave the campus in an orderly and peaceful manner. And now I hand over to Mr. Kong. As for our colleague that we injured, I am quite concerned, not only about my colleague, and also he is part of my media liaison team. Well, in that environment, he was trying to help the reporters of different organizations in their news gathering work. And this morning and last night, the media liaison team have been assisting to help the reporters when their employees have expressed their concern or how to move them away from the risky location, or we try to assist them with their material requests and also for a shift. However, our colleague was being shot with an arrow. And over the 5.5 months, we have been trying to be mindful of our staff team's members' safety. So for our protection gear, depends on the scale of violence, we have some refinements and enhancement. We will continue to identify appropriate protection gear for our team. And on the use of force, we claim that our use of force is responsive. If the rioters don't use any force, we will not need to resort to any violence force. Unfortunately, the scale of violence of the rioters has increased by manifold. Thus, we will need to take corresponding action in response. I urge the rioters to drop their weapons and give up violence and surrender as soon as possible. If you continue using such lethal violence, we must respond with minimal, necessary, and responsive force. Don't try to provoke us. Now I'll hand over to Mr. Lee to talk about the terrorism. On terrorism attack, the Hong Kong police have adopted the Cap 575 definition of the Anti-Terrorism Act, of the act of intimidating, a threat of threatening to commit terrorist act or for property damage or to threaten the public safety and health, to serious disruption to electronic systems or severely disrupting our key essential services. There will be a threat to achieve the objective to members of the public or for a religious or political or ideological impact. So on the surface, it seems that a lot of the acts may be very close to terrorist act. When assessing the risk, two key factors are important. First, whether it is highly organized or whether we have precise intelligence on this. Thus, on the terrorist risk assessment is still at a medium level. Sing Tao? First question, why would the police lay siege to the Polytechnic campus? Compared to the COHK, what the police want to avoid a confrontation that led to casualties that evacuate from number 2 bridge. Would you adapt the same strategy for Polytechnic? And just now, the police claimed to receive intelligence that someone at this guy to escape arrest by wearing reflective vests. So when the police got this intelligence, by whom and when? And how many reports have you released after verification? And in the early hours of Saturday morning, as a commercial radio reports that was shoved by police officers and was shot a sock launcher. And what is the follow-up? And has the officer been suspended from duty, or whether there will be a disciplinary action? And for the LRAD, the long-range acoustic device that made its debut yesterday, can the police tell the public on the number of times it was used and how many devices have been used and have it been used for 3 seconds? Yesterday, at the time of press release issued, it claimed that LRAD is to transmit important message. When it was used yesterday, what message was disseminated? And what message we need to transmit for 3 seconds? And what is the potential body harm, and what are the guidelines for using LRAD? And for the first two part of your question, on the siege of the Poly and the use of reflective vests, I'll defer to Mr. Chuck to take the question. As for the commercial radio reporting, we have issued a statement, and Mr. Kong will supplement. And for the third question, on the long-range acoustic device, I'll let Mr. Wang to answer the question. Mr. Chuck, and for the siege of the Poly, I had explained earlier that the incidents stemmed from some of the citizens voluntarily clearing the road blockade, which led to a large amount of black-clad protesters to assault them. Thus, we have a very long standoff. And our assessment was that the black-clad protesters have been looking to seize the opportunity to break out of the Poly campus and wield extensive damage. Thus, we have been adding reinforcement, and finally, we have successfully cornered them inside the campus. At this stage, we hope for a peaceful resolution. Thus, I continue appealing to them that all the rioters please drop your weapons and come out and surrender. As for the press vest, and in the past 6 months, it's not the first time that we saw some of the uninvited persons wearing different kind of reflective vests. That probably need no elaboration. In terms of figures, and those claiming to be first aiders, yesterday we found that there are at least 12 persons had no first aid qualifications and not working at a medical profession. Thus, these first aiders and how effective with them in addressing to the wounded, I have strong doubt on them. So for those who chose to stay inside Poly U, if you were injured, please come out. Because inside the TST emergency depot, we have already had a makeshift first aid post for you. And for the media, and to those coming out of Poly U, after the coordination with our media liaison team, we found that only 3 of those had not been able to produce any identifications to prove themselves belong to any media organization.
For these 3 people, we have arrested them for suspected to have participated in rioting. For the others who were wearing the high visibility vests, they have been let go. In relation to the other question, it's intelligence we have already. Mr. Kwong, as we've said, we have issued a statement a couple of days ago to give you information about what happened in Mongkok in the small hours on the 16th of November. Let me give you some information, a background information. It was the small hours of the 16th of November. A large number of rioters set up roadblocks in Nathan Road. They have used petrol bombs, have used bricks to attack police officers. So police officers along Nathan Road use CS gas to disperse them, and they have also mounted arrest operations. What happened was, when police officers intended to extend the dispersal action to Portland Street, at that time, riot police encountered a number of reporters. At that time, individual reporters got engaged in a quarrel with police officers. As we have always said that in arrest operation and dispersal actions, maintaining a safe distance is good for both sides. Our understanding is that from the information we have gathered from police officers, it was that some individuals refused to listen to the instructions of police officers. In the process, some reporters engaged in physical tussle with police officers. That individual turned around to leave, and the police officer fired that super sock. The purpose was whether he was trying to disperse the crowd or use it as a warning or to create a safe distance is something that we're going to look into in our line of investigation. Officers at the West Kowloon region will look into it. As I've said, that the officer involved is on leave, so I don't have anything to add in this regard. Your third question is about that LRAD, the long-range acoustic device. This device has been introduced into the force for over 10 years. This is a broadcasting system to convey important messages over a long range to a specific location, to a specific target of people to make sure that they will hear our warning or our instructions. What happened yesterday was that there were people firing arrows, metal beads from Polytechnic University. We had to maintain a distance to deal with the situation. In order to effectively disseminate warning or instructions to a group of targeted rioters at a distance, asking them to cooperate with us, this is one of the feasible and effective devices that we could use. Apart from giving warnings, it seems that, people did not really listen to us. On top of that, it might cause people to be more worked up. So for the time being, we will not use this device. We will use other ways, say for example, other loudspeakers. It might not be as effective, but we hope that we will be able to continuously issue warnings and keep our use of force to a minimum and as necessary only. When people don't listen to our warnings or instructions, we will use minimal necessary force to deal with protesters. That is the background for deploying an LRAD. What message did you examine? What is the effect on a human body? But to tell someone to freeze, to not to shoot arrows, and to not to storm police cordon, I've repeated many times. Regarding the effect on human body, I'm not an expert. We use this device according to the instructions of the manufacturer in a safe way. We use it in a safe and effective way. RTHK 3.
Thank you. First question on arresting people claiming to be first aiders and journalists. What do you mean by you're arresting them before what you said? You have no way to confirm their identity that you just said now. Because in the same way, they could be genuine first aider or journalists. Meanwhile, we see officers pointing guns at our colleague, RTHK reporter. Does that mean that journalists and voluntary paramedics could be targeted at the sites, undermining press freedom and humanitarian principle? Secondly, some online footage showing some officers seeming to be escorting a group of black-clad men onto a train that could run to reach the border. Wondering if you have seen that and if that's true. Thirdly, how did you reply to the Polytechnic University management on their calls to end this peacefully? You keep on saying people that they should surrender and come out. Any other ways that you think you can end these clashes at the Polytechnic University peacefully, other than asking them to surrender? Thank you.
For the first and the third part question regarding the Polytechnic University, I will invite Mr. Chuk to answer. And then regarding the rumors about the online footage, I will pass it to Mr. Gong. Chuk, please.
Your questions is about the arrest of so-called first aider and the journalists, and you did mention something about officers using their weapon pointing at them when they were leaving the Polytechnic. And you mentioned something about press freedom and humanitarian consideration. First of all, we have no way to identify who is a first aider and how to qualify an individual as a first aider. In our practice, only the fire services department are qualified first aider. So they will provide the best medical treatment to anyone in need. And as I already mentioned, among those dressed like a first aider and claim to be a first aider, we found 12 of them has no relevant qualification, and they are neither the employee of any medical or treatment center. In that sense, I'm very worried the standard they apply on any person in need. So, with the assistance of Fire Service Department, we have already set up a temporary first aid treatment center at the Tsim Sha Tsui ambulance depot, which is in the close proximity of the Polytechnic. If anyone within the campus consider in need of medical treatment, please come up. We will facilitate. And as to journalists, we already deploy our FMLC. They have the least protection, and one of them already suffered a very serious injury when doing his duty to try to facilitate press freedom. I think we have paid the price. If you talk about my fellow officers holding the cordon line, there are lots of things coming in, including something beyond your imagination. We have seen petrol bombs coming in, corrosive coming in, some metal bearing coming fired by slingshot, arrows. I think it will be wise for the officers to take precaution and use the weapon against anyone until, I'm not saying that use, I'm saying that use the weapon point to someone until they could consider safe to off guard. And that's why I urge all the professional reporters or press or journalists, please cooperate with us, comply with our requests. We need a safe distance to make assessment. Please at least keep a distance of 5 steps away from us when we are dealing with any incident, including handling of prisoner. I think you will recall I have a sergeant with his neck stabbed by an individual in close range. I don't want that happen again to any one of my fellow officers, and I don't want that happen to any one of you. As my appearance in the last press conference, I already say that for press, do not mingle or mix between us and the rioters. Because the situation in Polytechnics is really tense and really dangerous. I hope you could understand some of the officers need to take the precaution. And I also, once again, saying that we respect freedom of press, and we will continue to deploy our FMLC officers, despite of dangers, to assist you to perform your duty on the field. But please, watch out where you're standing. Do not stand within the firing range of the rioter, and do not stand within the line of sight of our weapon. Please move to a position where you could safely cover the incident you want to report on. And as to how to resolve this incident peacefully, you suggest to me, other than asking them to come out to surrender, is there any other ways to do so? First of all, I would say they have committed grave crime. They have used lethal weapon. They have launched deadly attack, not just to my fellow officers, but also to other members of the public who come or who came to simply want to remove the debris or barricade from the street. At least they could live in some sort of normality. I think this is a very humble request from those residents in the nearby vicinity. So, these rioters, they are also criminal. They have to face the consequence of their act. Other than coming out to surrender, I don't see at the moment there's any viable option for them. But I could assure we have the ability, we have the resolve, we have the capability to peacefully end this. So don't try their luck. Please come out, surrender to us. You will be treated fairly, and you will be facing a fair trial. This is the rule of law. That cannot be compromised. I'm open to any other suggestion that could end this soon and peacefully. Thank you.
Okay, before I go into detail on the incident happened on the track, I would like to supplement a little bit on the first part of the first question relating to whether some reporters were pointed by guns, etc. Actually, since last evening, as an officer in PPRB, I received a number of calls from different media organizations expressing their concern about the safety of their reporters in the Polytechnic University. Because, as you all could watch from the TV, how violent were the rioters in the past 2 days. So the PPRB had paid much effort to assist those reporters who have concern on their safety to leave the Polytechnic University. However, when the rioters knew about which exit or entrance the reporters will leave through which entrance or exit, these rioters will initiate attacks there at that spot. So our officer, our PTU officer or our uniform branch officer encountered great difficulties to ensure the safety of that exit or entrance to facilitate those genuine journalists to leave Polytechnic University. As mentioned by Chuck Sir, our officer had to take a lot of precaution measures so as to ensure the safety of our officers as well as those reporters. I think that's why our officer will stay on guard with their firearm or their long barrel, so as to ensure that the one who leave Polytechnic University were genuine journalists, but not those rioters disguising themselves in yellow vests, etc. And that's all I would like to supplement. Concerning the incident happened on the track, actually we receive information from the MTRC Incorporation that around 20 rioters tried to escape from the Polytechnic University through the track of the Hong Kong MTR station. And therefore we deployed some uniformed branch officer to proceed to Hong Kong rail station from the Mong Kok East rail station. And we successfully stopped, I could not remember the exact figure, I think 10 odds rioters at the track. And on the track, the only transportation that we could arrange to take these arrested person away is to arrange a train. So the MTR facilitate us to take all these arrested person away with the train, and I think that's what had happened on the track of the Hong Kong rail station. Thanks.
Where did the train go? Back to which direction?
As far as I know, they were taken to a nearby rail station where we could arrange our own transport to take all these arrested persons to the police station for further processing. Thanks.
今日最後三題 ，gentleman sitting on the second row.
Last three questions. The Hong Kong satellite TV about the anti-mass law. The High Court today had ruled it as unconstitutional because it bypassed the legislature and thus they have contravened the basic law. We can see the electrical members claim that this law have led to the escalation of tension. As we can see that one of the husbands into this law, the police arrested a lot of people on this charge. And for this piece of law, it did help to curb the violence or help with the police work. So now this law is invalidated. What changes in terms of your tactics? I'll hand over this question to Mr. Lee. We took note that there was a ruling related to judicial review on the prohibition on face covering regulation. The reporter had touched on the key points. Well, our concerns have been reflected in the ruling. It has mentioned that for the regulation article section 3, in terms of the public activities, the court agrees that this condition has some relevance to achieve some social purpose, thus some merit, and also mentioned that
in section 3 bracket 1A it says that the facial covering that is likely to prevent identification in an unlawful assembly. Well, it meets the proportionality requirement. Of course, the court has expressed their views. We are the main law enforcement agency. Our safe way is for us to suspend the enforcement of the prohibition on face covering regulation at this moment. We will consider the ruling before we decide how to proceed. Well, if you ask me whether this regulation is useful as a law enforcement agency, we think that it was of some use to us because people are prohibited from hiding behind a mask to do whatever they want. From literature and research, you could see that the determination to break the law if you cannot hide your identity is lower. As we have said, that by the reporter that we have arrested a lot of people after October. I will give you some figures for your reference. We have been quite conservative and restrained in the arrest under this regulation. Starting from October, we have only arrested people in 3 cases under the prohibition of face covering regulation. That is, those people who have been arrested solely on that. 2 of them have been charged. The cases have yet to go to court. We will discuss with the Department of Justice as to how to deal with the arrestees. Next question, Ming Pao. I'd like to ask Mr. Leung from the FSD. After 6 p.m. yesterday, how many calls for emergency medical service have you received? And of these calls, how many of them you failed to dispatch the ambulance to the location? How many people have been injured in the Polytechnic incident? Are there any chance that any of them have died as a result of lack of medical attention? Well, it's only until 2:30 today that people from Red Cross have been allowed to enter Polytechnic University to provide medical aid. How come that the entire campus has been blocked off? There has been people who have been bleeding, people who have been suffering from hypothermia. They have not been allowed to receive proper treatment. You don't allow people to leave because as soon as they do, you arrest them, and you don't allow anyone to go in. I would like to also ask about use of weapons. You started using weapons that we have not seen before. They are lethal weapons, like AR-15 and MP5, sun bombs, and LRAD. How come that you are escalating the lethality of your weapon? Is it the case that you are using ways to deal with terrorists when you deal with protesters? The first question is about what happened on Sunday, yesterday. How many calls we have received calling for the ambulance from the Polytechnic University. We're still compiling the figures. For the whole day of yesterday, there were only 2 calls for ambulance service received from Polytechnic University. We will have to sort out the information before I can give you an answer. Your second question is about the estimated number of injured people and the extent of their injuries at Polytechnic University. I'm unable to give you the information because I simply cannot assess the extent of the injuries and the number of injured persons. Mr. Chair, for the third question. The question from Ming Pao was that it was only after 2:30 that volunteers from Red Cross were allowed to enter. Well, it was claimed that there were people suffering from hypothermia or other requests for assistance, and that we did not enter to give them assistance, something along that line. First of all, we're at the outside of the Polytechnic University when we mounted the operation. People could freely go in and out of the Polytechnic University campus. We have been appealing to them to come out and surrender. If they did, and if if they needed medical attention, they would have got it. And I've already said that we have arranged for a temporary medical center at the ambulance depot at TST. If you have information about people suffering from injuries or hypothermia, would you please appeal to them to come out? We will not get in the way to stop them from receiving medical attention. The second part is why we chose not to enter. First of all, we had to make an assessment, and we assessed that there was a large amount of weapons inside the campus. A lot of them are flammable or they are explosives. If we enter, it would be very dangerous for police officers. And if we had to use force to subdue the people inside, both sides might suffer serious casualty. As I've said, that the Hong Kong police would like to peacefully resolve this incident. They have the weapons. If they put down their weapons, leave the campus, we would be able to handle it peacefully. The choice is in their hands. My only choice is that I have no plan at this moment to storm the campus because there is no urgent need for us to do that. You ask about escalation of the weapons we have used. The weapons of your description are standard issue. We've always had that in stock. You gave a description of the situation. I agree that the situation in Hong Kong is chaotic. There is serious social unrest. There are some places in Hong Kong where people feel that they are above the law. As we speak, a large number of people in Tsim Sha Tsui blocked the road, vandalized banks, and they set fire to various locations. They have completely flouted the law. We use a suitable level of force to deal with them. You mentioned about special skills of our officers. You used the term sniper. We have officers who have received professional training. We have the PTU, and we have the capability. If necessary, we will deploy such officers. My assessment of the Polytechnic University at this moment is that it is very dangerous. People have been appealing on the internet to go to support them. I ask you not to do it. I am worried that people who are well-intended to go to help might have been taken hostage by them. So I ask you not to go into the Polytechnic University campus. If you know of anyone who are in need of any medical help, please contact the police. We will make arrangements for that person to leave the campus and to receive medical treatment. I'd like to add that the principle of the use of force, of course, Mr. Wong is the specialist, but as you all know, the purpose of using force is to stop the force used by the other party. We also have to use it to protect police officers, the safety of reporters and those who are present. For this reason, we have to create a safe distance. I outlined these principles. As we've said that in the past 6 months, starting from June, when rioters started off using bricks, metal rods, and then they moved on to petrol bombs, and then they moved up to lethal force like bow and arrow. If they hadn't used lethal force, we wouldn't have to elevate the level of our weapon. Members of the public should say no to the escalating use of weapon. If we condone that, then This is connivance. So we need to see that rioters have escalated their violence where there are no limits. If we don't say no to them, Hong Kong will be left in ruins. You wouldn't want to see that.
CNN.
Hello, thank you. So, you said that you have no plans either clearing Poly University or making mass arrest. So you're waiting for the people to come out and drop the weapons and come out and surrender? So that's the first question. And are the police prepared to kill at the university? And we have seen long range assault rifles, and do they have live ammunition? Are the police aware of underage students on campus? And is the police refusing Ted Hui's request to escort them off-site at PolyU? Do you understand?
Can you repeat the last one?
Last question. So you are aware there are people, underage people at the PolyU campus. Is police trying to escort them off the site, out of the site at the PolyU, from the PolyU, instead of arresting them?
I will now invite Mr. Cho to answer the questions.
The CNN question is about our strategy at the moment. The police aim to resolve this incident peacefully. So our strategy at the moment, we continue our cordon. We continue to persuade those rioters inside to come surrender. And certainly, there are always other tactical options available. We will, and we have the capability to execute different options. However, at the moment, we shall continue to persuade them to come out. And you mentioned about we're having long barrel weapons, including rifles. Are they fitted with live ammunition? And whether we have some sort of orders on using that weapons, is that right? First of all, we are police officers. We aim to use our weapon to stop and control the individuals. This is our aim. And as to the choice of level of force, including from a simple presence and verbal challenge to the use of deadly weapon, there is a continuum. And all our weapons, if they are being put on field, they are ready for use. They are fitted with live ammunition, including, not limited to, our long barrel weapons, our less lethal weapons, that means smokes, beanbags, super sock, or rubber. Also, our officers' sidearms. They are all fitted with ammunition. And for live rounds, it's only those I mentioned. And for less lethal, you know that our weapon is also clearly marked. I would say we keep our option open. I would warn the rioter, don't test our bottom line. I have one fellow officer shot by arrow already. This is a very long-range weapon used by the rioter. And if we have to respond, I believe the only option is to use deadly weapon, because arrows are lethal. However, at the moment, my tactics is to move back my cordon line, make it out of range of the arrow. So, I would urge those rioters, do not try to escalate their level of weapon or violence. We have the capability. I will once again urge them to come out, surrender, as if they always claim they want to fight a better future. Then please come out and face the consequence of your action and uphold the rule of law of Hong Kong, which is one of their demands. I think you also mentioned something about whether there is any underage individuals within the Polytechnics. I have no concrete evidence or information at the moment.
We have sent reporters and they talked to students claiming in the variety age of 15, 14-year-old.
Okay. Then I would appreciate your reporter try to persuade them to come out. Right? If not, it would be impracticable for us to send a team to try to identify all those masked individuals. Who are you? How old are you? I think it would be asking too much to risk my officer's life to go in and try to identify one individual. I'm not talking about saving Pai Ryan. At least he wants to be safe. So if your reporter come across any minor inside, please ask them to come out. Please. Hey.
Press conference,
Thank you.